This week on Africa Health Check.
Inakuaffect kwa mwili, so mimi nikasema sitachanjwa, nikaa hivyo.
I did that in order for me to be protected from COVID-19.
We discuss the roles that vaccines play in our lives.
Vaccines are there to protect your children against now the bad effects that a disease can bring.
And address ways the African continent can build up capacity on its own vaccine manufacturing. And welcome to Africa Health Check, where we reflect on the health status of Africa. I am your host, Tlejang Paladi. On today's episode, we will be discussing the importance of vaccination and immunization on the continent, as well as reflecting on one of Africa's biggest vaccination campaign, being the COVID-19 vaccination campaign that is being led by the Africa CDC as well as the World Health Organization. To help me unpack this, we have our special panelist for this episode, Professor Omilabu, who is a professor of medical virology and a hospital virologist at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. I'd also like to welcome our usual commentators, Dr. Marianne Moreithi, who is the current chair of the Department of Medical Microbiology and Immunology and a senior research fellow at the University of Nairobi in Kenya, as well as Reverend Anthony Achampong, who's a pharmacist and a pastor from Ghana. But before we hear from these experts, let us have a look at this episode's feature.
My name is Mnyindo Tyromgola, and I'm from the coast in Kenya. I am a wealth management professional, and I specialize in personal risk management and insurance. I had to learn so many things very, very fast just because of COVID. For me, it robbed me of my health. It robbed me of my peace of mind. It just robbed me of so many important things. So this goes back to 2020, early 2020, when COVID started, at least in Kenya. And I remember this was March when it got really bad and we were told to, stay at home. That was a moment where I had, just begun my business. And my baby at that time was like about 8 months. And then I fell pregnant. We thought it was just something that could come and go, but as time went by, we saw that it was getting serious. So we just did our best to, handle it the best way it is that we could. And that's how it was until 2020 October. 2020 October is now when my husband fell sick. And at that time, I was about 32 weeks pregnant. I remember now on October 27th, when I was just feeling unwell. I was just feeling very tired. I couldn't breathe properly, but I thought it was because of my pregnancy, because I was quite heavy. So my husband insisted that I go to the doctor and my gynecologist. So I went to see my gynecologist, and when he checked my chest, my lungs, he was like, "This is not good, and I have to be admitted immediately." I just said goodbye to my husband and I went to hospital. Now when I went to hospital, they checked my vitals and they said it was not good at all, and they admitted me immediately. I was put under oxygen, and we continued. Then the next day, still in hospital, and I had been, trying to reach my husband, but I couldn't, which was not normal because he always picked up his calls. So I knew something must have happened, but I didn't know what it could be. Then Later on is now when my parents came in the evening and broke the news to me that my husband was dead. And after my husband passed away, when I was given the news, I was also not settled. And from what I was told later is that I was getting worse and worse, and they never thought I was going to make it. So they had to also get the baby out. The baby came 2 days later. It was an extremely painful experience. I had to learn how to now make decisions in the house, because I always trusted my husband to make the big decisions, but now I have nobody really to talk about these things. I have to make family decisions by myself. If you've seen my story right now and my life, and the possibility that the vaccine could have made a difference, you will have to have a vaccine, because being sick can rob you of everything. Yes, for me, it robbed me of my health. It robbed me of my husband. And usually when I think about the vaccine, I find it very, very important, because it's something that could have, I usually wonder if we had taken it before, if my husband could still be here, because it's one of those things, you know, that it's important to have, so that in the case now something was to, like this was to hit you, it's not as bad. That's how I understand the vaccines. Again, vaccines are there to protect your children against now the bad effects that a disease can bring. Because if you do get vaccinated and you do get immunized, it means that even when it does come, it will not hit you as hard. So if you can get something, if there's something that has been invented out there that can help you reduce these effects, or make sure that whatever disease that hits you is not going to be as bad for you or your children, you should have it. Because remember, an illness does not just affect you, it affects also the people around you, your family. It can affect also your greater relatives or your friends, because when a disease hits you very, very hard, it means that also your finances can go down the drain. So it is important, if I can urge you to get vaccinated, get vaccinated.
And that is our feature for this episode. Remember, we are discussing the importance of vaccination and immunization on the continent. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Professor, and thank you for your time. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's always my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Prof. If I could just give you this time to just introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you are based, and the work you are engaged in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you for inviting me to join to this episode. Sunday Omilabu is my name, and I'm a medical virologist working with the College of Medicine, University of Lagos. I'm the hospital virologist at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Prof. At Africa Health Check, we'd like to just find out a little bit about the background of our panelists. So maybe just briefly share with us, how did you find yourself in a medical field, and particularly specializing in vaccination and immunization?
Thank you very much. Being a virologist, vaccination or immunization, it's a very good aspect of virology as a discipline, because since the development of vaccines in the 20th century, the virologists have been looking at the role played by vaccines. And of course, we've been looking at efficacy, the efficiency, and then failure, especially of live vaccines if they are not well kept. So vaccination, immunization has been a very core part of our training as medical virologists.
Thank you so much. Such a wealth of knowledge and experience to share. I believe we are really honored to have you on today's show. And perhaps you could just lay the foundation for what we want to discuss today, which is the importance of vaccination and immunization in Africa. Maybe you could just give us a background and qualifying why this is and continues to be an important issue across the continent.
Thank you very much. As mentioned earlier on, vaccines are the major medical revolution that we witnessed in the 20th century. And it's still maintaining that role till today, looking at what the vaccine developed against COVID was able to do for the whole world. It is only when the vaccine was developed, distributed, that we sort of having kind of a check on that SARS-CoV-2 that has been spreading and disturbing the whole world. And people know that the vaccines cannot be wished away. And of course, looking at the role played by technology, that sort of hastened the production. And all of us, we agree that without that vaccine, perhaps we still be running up and down to see how we can checkmate the SARS-CoV virus. In terms of drug development, it takes years, and we need to test efficacy. And we all see that it's the vaccine that first of all got developed and released globally, even though the continent, because of our faith, we were the last to get a few doses, and which I believe we're still going to talk about.
Absolutely true. And I hope before we finish this show, we'll talk about some of the concrete measures, mechanisms that need to be put in place in order to enhance our capacity for vaccine production and distribution in Africa. I'm going to rope in Dr. Mary, and I know that as a medical practitioner and researcher, this is a very exciting topic for you. And I want you to reflect, what are some of the gaps that we still see, particularly in Africa, regarding vaccination and immunization rollout?
So thank you, and I'm quite excited to have Professor Omilabo in the show, a fellow microbiologist in a bigger role, but a virologist. So it's fantastic to have this really crucial discussion. And vaccines has been something I'm quite passionate about. And again, we know why in terms of eradicating diseases from the world. So there are several gaps that we have, and Prof has elegantly spoken about some of them. They are rolled out in the West or manufactured in the West, but by the time they come to Africa, the damage, the disease, and the mutations have already occurred, because again, these bacteria, the viruses mutate at some point. So really what we'd like to have is a vaccine manufacturing plant here in Africa. And I know we can do it in terms of getting teamwork, making all of us working together, so that once a disease is here, we have a very quick rollout so that we can save lives and also improve livelihoods. Other bigger matters that now have arisen, and this has been amplified by COVID-19 vaccine rollout, is vaccine hesitancy. We still have, can I call it, trust issues. Again, one of the issues that fuel this is these are products made in the West. Why are they rolling them out in Africa? Maybe they want to curb our fertility. Those are some of the talks that are on the streets. And I feel it's our role to really break down to everyone what vaccines are, what they have done. And this is a really crucial discussion to amplify the lives that have been saved. We don't longer hear about smallpox anymore, and that is because of vaccines. Polio, wild-type polio, is almost now eliminated in all corners of the world, even here in Africa. So, and why is that? It's because of vaccines. So we really need to shine the light what vaccines can do to curb down that vaccine hesitancy. So I'll stop there for now. This is I'm quite passionate about vaccines and vaccinology, and we can talk on and on about this, which are protective. And if they're protective, our people, the person who's been vaccinated has some level of protection against getting that disease. And that's what we want, to break the chain of infection, the chain of being contagious, so that, again, we can start now talking about eliminating some of these really crucial viruses from the world of bacteria. And now even we have a malaria vaccine that is about to be rolled out, which is a great thing, because I think it's one of the first parasitic vaccines to be rolled out. A big boost for us in science to have at least us having this conversation of having a malaria vaccine. So again, it's really looking good when it comes to vaccines, but we'd want now to have this vaccine manufacturing being produced locally so that it can be rolled out without all this bureaucracy and red tapes that we've been seeing or experienced with COVID-19.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump now to Reverend Achampong, who's also working in the medical field as a pharmacist. I want you to tell me, are we doing enough in terms of public education about the importance of vaccination and immunization and vaccine efficacy, just as an overall point of view, or is there more that we could be doing?
Yes. Aside of COVID pandemic, it is estimated that over 30 million children suffer from vaccine-preventable diseases. About 500,000 die, and Africa in particular represent about 58% of global deaths due to vaccine-preventable diseases. I do believe that this topic is very relevant to Africa because, of course, we represent the bulk of deaths due to vaccine-preventable diseases. So there must be education, and our government leaders and societal bodies must be all up in arms to deal with these. In Ghana, we can say emphatically that since 2003, there have been no deaths caused by measles. 2011, no deaths caused by maternal and neonatal tetanus. 2019, polio is almost eradicated. So there is empirical research data that proves that if governments, if countries will commit to vaccination and immunization, children will not die needlessly. And I do believe that the economic toll that these diseases or these infections cause on not just on children, but the whole population is quite enormous. So the conversation, this topic is quite relevant. And I think people that do hear these things, aside of COVID, aside of pandemics, it is a very relevant topic. And there must be education, there must be government funding, there must be, our health institutions should be bolstered so they can respond to all what we call the vaccine preventable diseases and immunization.
Thank you very much for that, Reverend. On the other side of this, I want us to discuss how to enhance our capacity in Africa for development, manufacturing, and distribution of vaccination, or vaccines rather. But for now, I want us to have a look at what people on the street had to say. See you after the break.
The first one and the second one. And the vaccination in Uganda, you would go to a recognizable health center. And when you go to that recognizable health center, they could vaccinate you and give you a card.
Yes, I have. And the process was hell. Yes. And let me say, some of the things we were being told before being vaccinated, some of the, I don't know, we were saying different things and we're doing different things. That's just the truth.
That's the need for the call for everyone to go through the vaccination, so that we reduce the pandemic.
And that is our word on the street for this episode. Remember, we are talking about the importance of vaccination and immunization on the continent. And I want to go back to Prof. I want you to share with us very briefly some of the challenges that you face on the field as you are trying to rally people to come and be vaccinated, to participate in immunization campaigns, in the different campaigns that you might have been involved in the past, but particularly to the COVID-19 vaccination campaign and drives. What are some of the challenges that you faced?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. And our people, they are ready to actually seek medical attention. And of course, they believe in immunization. But one of the major problems faced is the inadequacy of some of these antigens at the immunization centers, because most of the vaccines are being imported into our countries. And if I may tell you, our governments only pay a small portion of the funds to bring the vaccines in. So many a times, mothers will go to the vaccination centers only to be told to come back. So that one, they are sort of disenfranchised. So the willingness is not there on their part to go again. And so we are battling that to actually educate them that they need to understand that once the vaccines are available, government will call them, they shouldn't get tired. And of course, we need to look into the quality of the vaccines. From our own background, we lack a lot of resources to actually maintain some of these live vaccines. We lack resources to actually distribute these vaccines to, especially, the hard-to-reach area in our localities. So this sort of, which actually discourage mothers taking their children for immunization. And then, of course, if we are now going back to this recent one, the COVID-19 vaccines, it started from the inadequacy. We don't have enough vaccines to give. Then coupled with all the social messages that are being carried all over globally, that there are a lot of manipulations and so on, that we had a series of stories just to discredit the vaccine. So the people, they are willing, they are ready if the vaccines are made available. Then, of course, our governments need to do more by educating them and raise their hope that they need to get these vaccines. If they get the vaccines, it's going to be good for them and their children. And that will prevent them from bringing their children for minor cases.
I just want you to speak very briefly as you end off this interview, Prof, on how or what more we can do to counter vaccine hesitancy and vaccine misinformation that is still circulating, because there are still people not getting the COVID-19 vaccine despite seeing many more lives being saved as opposed to before when a lot of people were not vaccinated. So how else moving forward can we counter this misinformation, this hesitancy, and encourage more people to get vaccinated?
The onus of the education is on the government side and NGOs, which I think is going on in Nigeria. I also believe in Ghana too. So we need to reach out to our people at our religious settings, in the churches, in the mosques. So we carry the message to disabuse their mind, to let them know that vaccination is the only answer, and then to let them know that the vaccines they are talking about is not a poison. So they should disregard all those negative social messages that are agog all over. So we should not be we shouldn't stop talking to them all the time. Not until they change their mind. We need to let them know the beauty of taking the vaccine. I think it's already shown that if you are traveling, you have to travel with your vaccine card, because most of the people that have taken the vaccines are already well covered. And then, of course, we need to have enough vaccines available for our people. It's very, very key. They can easily use that to say, we were there, we were told to come back. So we shouldn't allow that to be the discouraging point. So we need to make sure we talk to them until they see the goodness in the immunization program. And then not only that, all the other vaccines too, we really need to make sure that we produce them locally. And I think the scientists and the government in the continent are now coming together to now make sure that we all pull our resources together to get local vaccine production. And this, if we can have 1 or 2 countries starting off, then we can now be expanding. And with that, once we know in Africa we have vaccines, like my sister mentioned about the monkeypox, we don't have any vaccine for it. Another, we don't know the virus. So if we have a local vaccine production, I know we will have done that. So we really need to have a local vaccine production. And then, of course, we need to engage people in immunization education program. It's very, very key in our own environment here. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier on that there are some areas that are described as hard to reach area. So we need to get to them. We have to find means of getting to them. Because if those areas are left alone without coverage, so they constitute a big risk to the majority that have taken the vaccine. So, and it is only in the continent that we have these so-called hard to reach areas. So we should include it in our program. And of course, all our radio and television jingles should not cease to educate people from time to time, just to complement what the religious bodies are doing when they meet the congregation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. You know, as you're talking about how to reach people, you are now activating and awakening the activist in me, because I'm always saying, you know, why is it that we have hard to reach people in Africa? But you will find a bottle of soda there, you'll find an election t-shirt there. So it doesn't mean that we are not able to reach those people. It means that we are prioritizing how we reach those people. So it's very important that when we talk about life-saving commodities such as vaccination and immunization, we do prioritize reaching those people and not saying they're hard or they're not reachable. So thank you very much for that. We have come to the end of the show, and I'd like to extend my thank you to Professor Omilabu, Dr. Marianne, as well as Reverend Anthony Achampong for sharing your sentiments as well as your experience to this discussion. There's a common saying that people lie, but numbers do not lie. And over the years, we have seen the numbers that prove that vaccines save lives, they improve livelihoods. So let us make sure that we do empower ourselves and get the right knowledge about vaccination and do get vaccinated as appropriately or as we need to do so. This is Africa Health Check. Make sure you connect with us on all our social media platforms. We would love to hear from you. Until we meet again, same time, same day, same place. Remember that the future is Africa, the future is today.